All right, hello everyone, and welcome to what's going to be our fourth video in aggregate supply side policies, where we're going to be looking at tax reform and welfare reform and how that impacts aggregate supply, how they aim to improve efficiency or improve the labour force participation rate. This is following on from what is the first three videos which I recorded last year. Last year there was a condensed study design, so although that may have said that it was the end at the end of the third video, there's actually three more to come, where we talk about this one, then we're going to talk about immigration policy in the next one, and then finally strengths and weaknesses of aggregate supply side policies to finish off all of VCE economics. It also means that at the end of these videos, there'll probably be some new content around questions specific to the stuff that was cut out last year. So let's get straight into it with what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be looking at how welfare reforms and tax reforms are designed to influence aggregate supply and living standards. So they're very important. There's been a lot of it over the last 2 years, so I'm going to dive right in. So welfare and tax reforms and their impact on aggregate supply. So we're going to start off with welfare reforms. So welfare is seen as the transfer payments made by the government to improve the living standards of the unemployed and disadvantaged, to minimize poverty and provide a dignified standard of living. I find that often students have a very narrow window of what they believe welfare to be. They often just think of it as unemployment payments, but this also includes disability payments, parenting subsidies, all those kind of things that help the disadvantaged. So welfare reforms are any changes to the rates or eligibility criteria for these payments. So anything that changes the overall amount paid or who can access it would be considered a welfare reform. So welfare needs to be generous enough that it allows the recipient to be able to satisfy their needs. However, it cannot be so generous that it will incentivize those receiving it not to return to the labour force. So to go to a bit of an anecdote. So when I was going through uni, I was working in a drive-through bottle shop, and it used to infuriate me that there was one particular customer who would come in and was on what was New Start at the time, which is now Jobseeker, and would basically to get New Start, you would have to attend a certain amount of job interviews per week. And this guy had somehow worked out his life to that he could live off of the amount he was receiving in welfare. Obviously, it probably wasn't the best standard of living, but he was happy enough with it. And so what he would do to make sure that he didn't get a job is he would buy alcohol on his way to the job interviews, drink it, and then go to the job interview smelling of alcohol. So then he would not get those jobs and would continue to be able to get welfare, which is insane. So welfare cannot be so generous that it makes people not want to return to the labour force. So some recent welfare reforms. So Jobseeker, which was introduced last year in the pandemic, originally doubled the rate of welfare received by the unemployed during the pandemic. So this was replacing New Start allowance, and the rate was slowly reduced as Australia recovered from the pandemic. So as we had more and more people return to the labour force, they reduced those payments to make them less generous because they wanted people to be more motivated to return to get a job. These reductions then aim to motivate the unemployed to return to the workforce, as a regular working income would more greatly satisfy their needs and wants. Pretty obvious. It means that if you're getting less, so originally I think it doubled from $450 to around $900 per week, in some cases up to $1,050 per week, then got decreased all the way back down, which means that people now on average are getting far less. I believe it's per fortnight, around $500 per fortnight, which is not a great income compared to what you'd get otherwise. Then we've got tax reforms. So these are changes to the rates of tax paid by households and businesses with the aim of increasing aggregate supply. Decreasing business tax will decrease the cost of production for a business and therefore make them more efficient and more motivated to increase production, therefore increasing aggregate supply. Whereas decreasing personal income tax works a little bit differently. So decreasing personal income tax motivates more labor to search for employment, which makes us more efficient overall and increases aggregate supply. So by decreasing personal income tax, people who don't have a job currently are more motivated to go and search for a job because they're like, well, I'm going to be earning more than I would previously, so I'm more incentivized to try and get work because I'll be able to keep more of that income. That makes us more efficient because if more people are working, we're more able to access our labor resources and help increase production and therefore increase aggregate supply. So some recent tax reforms. So reducing the tax rate for small and medium businesses to 25% this year. This reduces the cost of production for these businesses, incentivizes them to expand production and therefore increasing aggregate supply. So a small and medium business is a business with a turnover less than $20 million. This really incentivizes them. So by knowing they're paying less tax, they're going to be able to keep more of their revenue as profit. They are more willing to invest and expand, and increase their production, which is great because then that's going to lead to greater aggregate supply overall, which is the whole point of the reform. The $1,080 tax offset for low and middle income earners. This incentivizes labor resources to re-enter the labor market and seek employment as they'll be able to earn higher income than previously. This increases the efficiency of businesses and therefore helps to increase aggregate supply. Exactly like we said before, gets very, very repetitive, but it's very, very, very important in that way. And then a final tax reform is the changing of the income tax brackets for middle income earners. So the old threshold for middle income earners used to end at $90,000, and if they earned more than $90,000, they'd have to pay a higher rate of tax on any income over $90,000. They increased that to $120,000 for that middle income bracket. So that means that now there are $30,000 more where people are paying a lower tax rate than they were before. So once again, by earning more money or being able to keep more of your income, this incentivizes labor resources to re-enter the labor market and seek employment, as they'll be able to earn a higher income than they were previously. This increases the efficiency of businesses and therefore helps to increase aggregate supply. So these two things work in the very similar way every single time. So if you find some policies that work for you, you can keep using them over and over and over and over and over again because they work the same. And that's essentially it for tax and welfare reforms. There are obviously a lot more of them. You did it, you're smarter now, but there's a lot more that you'll be going through. Find policies that work for you. Different people mark different questions on your exam, so you can have a small amount of policies that you use a whole lot. The great thing about using the 1080 tax offset and the business tax cut, you can also use that for aggregate demand side policy and just explain it differently. It's brilliant. You're doubling down. You're having to remember less and getting double the effect from it. That's win-win, in my opinion. If this was helpful to you and you want any more help in this, we'll have 2 more videos coming out for this topic to finish it off. Anything else that you need, head to my website, www.therunningeconomy.com, or email me, Sean@therunningeconomy.com. I really recommend checking out the blog. It seems that more and more people are checking it out, which is great, reading the random stuff that I try and take the real world economic stuff and put it into simpler English so everyone can understand it. Other than that, if there's anything that I can do to help you, make sure you reach out and get in touch. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.